life, your term show.
Okay, I am super excited to be here with Scott. And Scott, for those people who don't know you, because you've been on our podcast before, and I'm a big fan of I know you've written multiple books, and I can't remember if you're doing more. We'll let you tell us. Can you just introduce yourself? Who are you? What are you up to? What would you like people to know about you, Scott?
Sure. My pleasure to be back, Tom. I always enjoy our chats. What do you need to know about me? I'm in Edmonton, born and raised. I came from a background in traditional finance. So I spent sort of 15 years in the world of compensation and rewards. And
your voice is already going lower as you talk about that.
Yeah, my journey with Bitcoin started in 2020. I was managing a bunch of pensions at the time when the country went into closure, and the government's response to printing money to pay people to stay home and pay businesses to stay closed got me really wondering about inflation. And, flash forward 6 years later, obviously we've learned a lot about the creation of money and the value of money and the relationship of those things. And I spent that spring studying Bitcoin, and then I spent the next year and a half watching Bitcoin and learning some hard lessons. I think nobody gets it right away, or very few people get it right away. It took me a long time to really understand it. I was investing in kind of some altcoins during that last bull run cycle and experienced a massive catastrophic loss when the Terra Luna coin imploded. And that was sort of the event for me that really crystallized Bitcoin versus everything else. And
I may have forgotten that you went through that, I guess, if you had shared that.
I haven't always told that story.
Oh, okay.
And Terra Luna was like one of these magic money protocols, and their stablecoin was yielding 11%. So my bear market plan was to just stash a bunch of money in there and make 11% over a couple of years and come back when Bitcoin was out of hibernation. And it went from 80 billion market cap to zero in 24 hours, and took a significant percentage of my wealth with it. Wow, these are all, everybody has their Bitcoin origin story, right? And part of the benefit of what happened there in hindsight for me was it became a motivator to help other people understand the difference and help other people avoid, unnecessary pains and pitfalls. And I felt a little bit, in some ways, uniquely positioned to do this. I had this background in understanding how employers think about different products they offer their staff as part of recruitment and retention. And I realized that there was a big, absence in the market for a way to bring Bitcoin into the workplace. And that was really what I started dreaming about. That idea eventually became Block Rewards. I got connected with my co-founder, Josh Curlett, and we started building this idea. And we're almost 3 years later. So it's exciting. It's nerve-wracking. The Bitcoin space is, I think the longer you stay in Bitcoin, the more you realize everybody wants to know what it's doing, and everybody feels a compulsion to have a knowing about what Bitcoin's going to do next. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Are we in a bear market? Is it a bull? Whatever. It never ends, right? It's just the longer you stick around, the more you realize that nobody knows, and that doesn't prevent people from trying to know. But Bitcoin is just super unpredictable. It doesn't care about your desires. It doesn't care about your urgency. It will excite you. It will keep you up at night. It's all things. Yeah. You mentioned I've written some books. I wrote a simple introduction book about Bitcoin geared for financial advisors, which was really, as I was learning about Bitcoin, I started just thinking about it, and I started talking about it, and I started talking about it as I was having lunch with old colleagues and stuff, and I was having all these repeated conversations.
Oh, wow. Yeah, really, they thought you were crazy. But sorry, keep going.
Yeah, the book just became a collection of these conversations that I'd had, and it's kind of wrote itself. That book, I think, really prepared me to then write more of a serious book, which is The Tao of Bitcoin, which is kind of an intersection of different ideas I've had studying Eastern philosophy for 20 years and reading a lot great books on the subject. One of my favorite books is a book called The Tao of Physics, which is for people who are interested in metaphysics and science. Is kind of like one of these books I recommend to anybody who's interested. And so I wanted to write a book like that. And I mean, I don't know. I tried. So
you did well. Your book, I just want to give that book some praise. Your book, it was absolutely incredible. I listened to it as an audiobook. I shared this with you before, just walking my dog around the park. And your book made me have thoughts of like, oh my gosh, Bitcoin is this thing that I know everyone talks about the price, but to me, it represents something much more. Like sometimes I think it's like an angelic touch, a spiritual touch into a chaotic world that is forcing order in a confusing consciousness that humanity might have. It's like forcing order in the chaos. And like we all have to adapt around Bitcoin because Bitcoin doesn't give two shits. Sorry for my language. It just is what it is. And it's like forcing all of us to kind of respond to it. And like it forces good choices and it forces you to think deeply about subjects that I really didn't pay attention to, especially when it comes to money. So your book was like this beautiful introduction to that for me. And I hope in what I'm sharing now, I don't, I'm not bastardizing any kind of way that you would talk about your book, but it really made me think about Bitcoin in a real different way. Like I was having those thoughts, but you crystallized a lot of that for me. So your book is just magical. Like highly recommend it. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. You nailed it. Like, I mean, everything you said there, I think is what I was trying to do with it. And I had been tinkering with it over the last, once I put it out, I did have this kind of lingering feeling it wasn't quite done. And I released a second edition at the end of the year last year. So the book's kind of more in a place where it feels a little bit more final now. And I do think it's kind of done. Like I don't have any plans to go back and leave it. But I have been working on another one that I'm really excited about and should be ready. I'm targeting in April. And so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And then are you telling us just the subject matter of that third book or no? For now, you're keeping it under wraps.
I think that the books will make sense together as a reflection of my own personal progression in understanding some of these ideas. And what I've kind of done with this third book is taken a few core ideas that I had talked about in Tao of Bitcoin and blown it out into an entire book. And so when I was learning about Bitcoin and thinking about Taoism is really this philosophical tradition that, among other things, tries to get people interacting with daily life in a way that allows them to spend the most time possible in the present moment. And the idea, Taoism is sort of like fulfillment happens when you can minimize the amount of time you spend looking backward with regret or forward with anxiety. True bliss and joy happens when you're really just in the here and now. And, that book, what part of what I was trying to convey was this feeling that I was experiencing with Bitcoin, which I think Bitcoiners articulate this as lowering their time preference. And what that means is that Bitcoin's monetary properties incentivize long duration thinking, and they enable you to exit a system where money is continually becoming worth less. And the issue with money becoming worth less, we've sort of been trained by the TV to think that inflation is this natural phenomenon that happens in economies and it's a necessary lubricant to keep things moving. But in reality, we all trade a combination of our time and our energy in exchange for money. And we do that so that we can survive. And we transform our energy and time into this thing that is value so that in the future, we can transform it back into time and energy that we consume, right? And so some of it gets transformed immediately back so that we can consume our daily sort of needs. And some of it is into the distant future. So when money degrades and becomes worth less, what it is really doing is eroding the time and energy that you expended transforming it into money. It's not a harmless consequence. It's a very serious thing, and particularly with time, because time is this one thing that for each of us is finite, and none of us actually know exactly how much of it we have. So it's a problem. And how we register that problem in our nervous system is this kind of ambient anxiety of always feeling like time is running out. And so what I've observed, or what I was
say it like that. Sorry, like I love that you break it down like that, because then that extends across all of your community. It extends across society. It's why we all feel the way we do, And once you begin to really internalize what you just said, you realize, oh my gosh, when I can, with Bitcoin, I can now relax. Yeah. And it might take you a few of the fiat dollar prices, roller coaster of Bitcoin to go through that. But to really understand what you own, you're like, I can finally relax about my own future. Like I can feel okay. I can be in the moment because I'm not so worried about tomorrow. Like,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's a fiat is an operating system that produces a feeling of perpetual scarcity, and the result of that is the shortening duration of your ability to make decisions, and it's like continual need for more. So when you think about what degrading money does, it inhibits your ability to safely transmit value into the future, right? And we know that we can't send it. We might even want to send value beyond the future of our own lives, right? Like that's what inheritance is. And like what you're just trying to do is preserve your life. And so so I think that as I understood Bitcoin better, I was taking some of these monetary principles and just experiencing them in my daily life, where I almost just noticed that I stopped worrying about certain things, and I noticed that my mind space was becoming less occupied. And it was not Bitcoin per se that was, transforming my, experience of time. But what it was doing was enabling my conscious mind to have a more fulsome experience of the present moment. And that's really what I think the Tao of Bitcoin is I say the Tao of Bitcoin is a sense of tranquility that accompanies a comprehension of energy money, because what Bitcoin really is this thing that transforms energy and time. It refines energy and time into a value system that because of its finite nature, it almost it traps it and enables us to save it for later. And so when you've got that problem solved, you can all of a sudden totally go out for a walk, cut the grass,
Yes.
And this is the first step towards, I think, what we are all really here for, man, which is connecting with people, enjoying ourselves, having the ability to consider things that are passions for us, or, interesting things that make us happy. It's a short ride.
We're sure your unique gift is what I always talk about, is that we have some people going into careers in finance that really should be writing poetry. But we have some people going into sell insurance that really should be the best architects we've ever seen. And what fiat has done is it forces people into living a life that is going to reward them financially instead of reward them with purpose and kind of replenish their soul. And I know for someone just listening to this, hearing maybe me and you talk about this, they're like, I don't understand where these guys are coming from, but I just feel like we aren't all living with sharing our unique gifts to the world. And Bitcoin has the potential to return that at scale. Mm-hmm. And if it does, I mean, it's a beautiful place we all live in. And it's funny, just listening to you speak, I realized, when I first discovered Bitcoin in 2020, I mean, I heard of it earlier, but, we all have our own journey, but I became what I would call a Bitcoiner in 2020. I went through about 3 years of listening to podcasts, also hosting podcasts with everybody that I could kind of convince to come on the podcast. And everybody was so gracious, got a lot of people. And then I have to admit, in the last 18 months or so, I'm so at peace with what Bitcoin is. I feel like there's not much to share. I just feel I get it. and I know there's more. There's always deeper parts of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. So I'm not saying I get it all, but I'm like, oh, I don't, yeah, it's like, this is great. Like, we don't need to keep talking about it. Like, it's here and we can just live with it. You know, I know a lot of people don't understand it yet. So there's more for us to do. I get that. But I think you know what I mean. It's like, you come at, you're at peace with it. You're like, oh, okay. Like this.
I totally do, you know, and I think there's even, you know, to some extent, for a lot of us, there isn't really a continual need to be consuming Bitcoin, you know, repetitive stuff. It's hard to keep looking at it like Rubik's Cube from a different angle. Like eventually, you've seen all the sides of it, and you know, and to some degree, I think there is a certain like fatigue with the broader like intellectual conversation about Bitcoin. And but you know, people love to think about it, they love to talk about it, and
it's why I like your angle too.
There's nothing wrong with like putting it down, and you know, it's meant to do that so that once you've figured it out, you know, you can go do other stuff.
Yeah. You know, it's incredible. So, okay. So I have a question for you. When you're talking to, and I want to get into block rewards in a second, but I do have a question. When you're talking to like any financial advisors right now, or in your past life, anybody running a pension or involved in that industry, is there like a common misconception about Bitcoin that still exists today? Is it the same thing that's always existed with Bitcoin? Can you just share that? Like when you're having these conversations with the traditional finance world today, what is like the biggest misconception in 2026 that you're hearing? I'm curious.
That's a good question. You know, I would say a handful seem to still come up routinely, and you know, they are a lot of them old ones. One that we get a fair amount of is it's going to be replaced by something newer or better. You know, which is amazing. Like I saw a slide yesterday. The number of failed cryptocurrencies is now over 13 million. You know,
oh no ways! Oh my god!
You know, so how many times do you have to get it wrong before you know this is a one-time invention that's very easy to copy, but it's you know, easily imitated, never duplicated. So that would be one. I have seen a fair number of questions this last while around the quantum FUD, I would say, and I think there seems to have been like a mainstream media penetration of that narrative, where, I mean, quantum computing is a whole other rabbit hole. And, but yeah, that's one that I have.
It's a good one to FUD with, because who's going to be the authority on quantum and quantum physics and time and the infinity of time? Like so now who's arguing? Like, how do you argue that? Like, you're like, okay, there's this threat out there that nobody in the mainstream can quite articulate. So it's just like, there's this fear. Yeah. You know, like, so it is a beautiful way to attack Bitcoin. I mean, it's not a threat to me, in my understanding. But yeah,
there's no way to pin it. It's like Elon saying we're going to be on Mars in 10 years. And like in 10 years, he'll be saying 10 years. Like, it's just like, you can never know. So yeah, that's another one for sure. I think, you know, then like over the last few weeks, the stupid thing around like Epstein coin and
okay, I've been getting that too.
And where that one seems to particularly have landed is with people who have unfortunately caught the Ripple mind virus. And I'm sad for more than a handful of people in my network have been have caught the propaganda, the Ripple propaganda machine, and believe that there's the Epstein thing for them was the nail in the coffin. So maybe those would be three things that I would say.
That's another one. Yeah, and I got the same one. I got a bunch of text messages on that one, like right when I think it was last week. So this would be early February. Okay, I got one more question for you. Did you write something called Bitcoin Won't Fix Pensions? I forget. Did you write something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what's the nuance with that? Like, what are you trying to say? Because now you're trying to, with block rewards, you're in this space and helping people out. So what did you mean by that piece? Can you share?
Yeah. So originally, I thought I started really spending time thinking about Bitcoin when what I thought was going on was the death of the 60/40 portfolio in early, like kind of in early 2020. And that has turned out to be true. I think we are headed into a long-term environment where holding 40% of your portfolio in bonds is going to be complete lunacy. Mm-hmm. And so, these are, when I didn't understand Bitcoin as well, I sort of thought, Bitcoin was going to be something that needed an allocation inside a pension fund. And there are some structural problems with that idea. It's really not that straightforward. And that's part of the reason why we haven't seen, part of the reason is that, fund managers maybe don't have the conviction or they don't understand Bitcoin. And the other part is, it's not really the perfect asset to fit inside a pension fund. Pension funds have, complicated models that run quarter to quarter and are managing a payout schedule to a large number of people, and that needs to understand reliably how the outflows impact the total amount of money they have. So that's a problem. I mean, Bitcoin is behaving in a way that we still don't understand. This last, year, a lot didn't go up as high as a lot of people thought. Like it was barely, 1x from top to top. If that was the top, we don't know. If it was the top, it still had a massive drawdown. You can't really be having an asset that has sort of a 5-year return today on Bitcoin is basically zero. And inside that, it experienced like a 50% drawdown. So so it's complicated. What I think now more is that people may want to think about being their own pensions. And I think that's where Bitcoin comes in. And I think that's where Bitcoin Savings Plan comes in. We need pensions because we need to grow our money into the future, assuming that money will be less valuable in the distant future. And we need professionals to help us do that. And, if we went back, went back before Henry Ford and before pensions, how people would have thought about what they could do with money, there really wasn't investing, for the average person, right? You go back to, Industrial Revolution, England, workers would have had money that they saved, and then they would have had money that they spent. And that money that they saved, they probably would have kept it in like precious metals, like in gold coins.
Hey everyone, before we dive back into the podcast, I've got a quick shout out about the Your Life, Your Terms report. This is Tom's weekly newsletter where he and Nick share real stories, experiences, and powerful insights to help you live life on your terms. Each week, Tom breaks down the economy, real estate, macro trends, and Bitcoin, and gives you actionable steps to make these insights work for you. No fluff, no vague predictions, just a clear path to thriving no matter what's going on in the world. Tens of thousands of Canadians are already getting the real information they need to level up their lives every week. I can honestly say it's the only newsletter that I've stayed subscribed to for years. It delivers real value that keeps me coming back for more. Join us and start getting the insights and tools to create the life you want, plus entertaining and inspiring stories from Tom and Nick along the way. Sign up for free at rockstarinnercircle.com/get-started and start living life on your terms. That's rockstarinnercircle.com/get-started. Your first step to living life on your terms.
And so, I think that a way to think about, using Bitcoin to prepare for your future, Bitcoin is a savings tool, among other things. But if you can simply save money that you have today, without investing it, without thinking of it as investing, investing is a friendly term for gambling. And we gamble, we've normalized gambling with investing to a growing degree. So then this coincides with this concept of the death of the 60/40 portfolio. You go back even further, before people were managing their own stock portfolios, before people were, day trading in apps, and nobody when I was getting started in finance, around the turn of the century, nobody would be entirely invested in the stock market. And like, I have to have 100% of your assets in the stock market. And that's pretty normal now. You kind of have to, because if money's losing value at 9% a year, like, you need to, return 11 or you're falling behind. And this is one of those things. It forces behaviors and choices that we have normalized. But I think given the choice, if people really understood what they could do with Bitcoin, like, a lot of people really wouldn't gamble their money on companies they don't understand or sectors they don't know how to evaluate if there was a simpler solution. And that would really be what, the person 150 years ago squirreling away gold coins would have been doing. It's funny too, like, because with this recent run up in gold, the average person, well, actually anyone, would have been better just buying gold over the last 25 years than they would have been gambling on companies. And so I think sound money, there's a sound money argument that I think employers can think about, that, maybe it doesn't need to replace your pension now, but there's certainly a compelling argument that just saving is going to be very beneficial for most people. And all of the added complexity that comes with money managers and these systems, it helps protect people from themselves, but it's also has come with a cost. I also think that, we're going to see something really wacky happen over the next 3 to 5 years with the continued progression of AI and how it's going to change how companies work, how things are valued. And it's going to be really difficult to pin what a lot of the things that we do now look like in 2030. And so one of the things that I'm least worried about is Bitcoin. And
yeah, that's a good way to frame it. Yeah. Yes. You said so much there. And, just give me a flashback. I remember we were pounding the table, by the way, for all of our clients and anyone listening to buy gold. We kind of had this 3-bucket strategy back in 2008. We were like, okay, the financial crisis caught us off guard as a family. We almost lost everything in real estate in the 1990s. Now we're caught off again. How does this money system work? And that's when Nick and I really did a deep dive in 2008. And from that research, we were like, holy smokes, we need 3 buckets. We need liquid cash for emergencies and deflation. We need long-term savings. And to us, that was gold. And then we need productive assets. And to us, this was starting your own business or rental properties. That's like, to us, it was a business in a box. You have a beautiful single family home, you in a good neighborhood, a starter home, because that's the most liquid piece of real estate. You rent it out to a good family. And that's one way to have a business that you got to buy. That's why we called it a business in a box. These are your 3 buckets, or start a business, make your own business. But with these 3 buckets operating, you could really navigate anything that came your way. And, people made fun of us on the gold one for so long. They were like, it did do well from 2008 to 2012. And then we kept talking about it. And people were like, oh my gosh, would you just stop talking about gold? And then it did exactly what you said it did. If you just held the gold from the time we were talking about it or earlier, and you just had long-term savings in it, it has served its purpose. And then Bitcoin came along, and it really introduced me to some of the limiting factors of gold, because the mobility, if you have physical gold, the ability to move it around is really quite difficult. And the ability to make it into liquid fiat that you might need in an instant is very difficult as well. And so when 2 things happened around 2020 for me, it was like, when I looked at the Bitcoin price, I expected it to be 0 in 2020. And then it was before that little flash crash. So I think it was around 6K. And I remember thinking, why is this thing not 0? Like, I thought it failed. Like, how is it $6,000 still for like a Bitcoin? This is early 2020. And I'm like, I don't understand that. Like, how is it? I expected it literally to be 0. I think I looked at it in 2018 and thought the same thing around 6K. So I might be missing the which time frame that was. But anyway, it was 6K. And I was like, huh. And now when Bitcoin's done what it's done, and hearing you say it's back to this price of like 60K, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, we're at that moment where it's like people are freaking out. They're like freaking out about it. And it's $60,000 US for one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, it could even be a different price, much lower price. And it's still like wouldn't have, it's still doing its thing. And I think that's the test with Bitcoin. It tests you. It's basically challenging you. It's like, can you hold me? Because I'm going to be a wild beast to hold. Can you try to understand me? Because there's nothing like me before. And if you can, you get this benefit of sound money that's also geographically independent.
Yeah.
Like if you try to fly to Croatia, where we go every summer with a bit of, silver in your bag or gold, it's kind of a little sketchy thing to do. Mm-hmm. But Bitcoin introduces this pure geographical freedom, which is like this wonderful thing that like nobody is really, or few people have placed a value on. But to me, it's very apparent. Anyway, I want to get to Block Rewards. So like now you've transitioned to started this company, Block Rewards. So can you just tell us what exactly are you doing? Because I have some questions on how it's like how you're pulling this off, what you're doing with companies. Can you talk about Block Rewards?
Yeah, so we've got one product in Canada live right now that's called Bitcoin Savings Plan. And Bitcoin Savings Plan sort of works like a group RSP, but it's not possible right now to register Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not a qualified asset in Canada. So it's an unregistered savings plan alternative for companies to offer their staff.
So you can't, it can't be inside the RRSP yet.
No.
Wow, it's still there? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's something that I think is going to change. Like the Canadian Bitcoin Consortium and is pushing that right now. It's one of the things Trump and the Trump administration in the US is sort of like you're seeing similar moves on in the US side. So I think it'll happen. To be honest, like I think that RSPs are a complete scam, and I think that everyone listening should avoid them at all costs.
I'm so happy you just said that. I'm so happy. Go on. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, it's a way for you to penalize yourself right now. Like it's a short-term carrot of a tax refund, but it comes at a deferred cost. And as tax brackets rise over time, you end up, I think, essentially, locking away your money for no reason. Bitcoin enables you to buy something that is growing so much faster that it's worth forgoing the tax refund. And in exchange for that, you have something that's liquid, something that you can use as collateral. Like you don't want Bitcoin in your RSP. So you don't want to have it in your RSP. I think if you want to have a Bitcoin ETF in your RSP, that's great. Like if you have money in there already, totally. But if you have $100 now, I would say I would just buy Bitcoin rather than putting in your RSP and hoping that Bitcoin will be able to be in there one day. Like the whole point of having a Bitcoin is that you can actually do stuff with it. Mm-hmm. And if it's sitting in your RSP, you're going to be incredibly limited in how you're going to be able to use it. So.
Oh, and I don't know if most Canadians know this, but when I started this business with my brother, I had to sell some of my RRSP. And I called the bank, and I didn't have that much in it, but I needed the money. And I said, can you just like send me a check for this or whatever? I'm selling whatever it's invested in, just send me a check. And they're like, oh, well, we'll be withholding. And I forget how much tax they said. I'm like, whoa. I'll pay the tax when I get the money and I'll declare it. And they're like, oh, no. And they kind of chuckle. They're like, I guess you don't know how this works. We hold off the tax at source.
Yeah.
And then your accountant or, do your taxes that year. If we held back too much, we'll, refund you the rest, or you might owe more. You might even owe more. And then I was like, well, how little can I sell? So you hold the least. And it was 5K. So like for multiple days in a row, I was like selling 5K at a time, like 75K, because I think they were only holding 20% back at the 5K amount back then. I don't know if that's still true. And so I don't think Canadians know that. You don't even get your own money. Like they just hold the tax at the source. It's brutal.
A total scam.
Oh, so I'm 100% with you. And you're one of the few people that have said that. So like, I love it because people laugh at me when I just like RRSPs. Are you kidding me? Okay. So then keep going with Block Rewards.
Yeah. So basically, we typically align Bitcoin Savings Plan contributions to a company's payroll cycle. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's just what most companies that are using the product now do. And so plans can be structured in a super customizable way where employees can make contributions voluntarily. And this has some value for people, even who just want to buy Bitcoin, because in our program, the employer covers the fees. So like if you're buying $100 in Bitcoin from an exchange, you're going to get $98 And with us, a contributing plan member spending $100 gets $100. They also get, the ease of doing it through payroll, which is a benefit for a lot of people who, there's a wealthy barber concept of paying yourself first. And a lot of people, this is one of the benefits of group savings plans, is if the money just comes off its source as a deduction, they never see it. It makes saving just a lot easier for people. So that's one piece. The second piece is an employer contribution, which is optional. And so as is the employee contribution. So employers can offer their staff some Bitcoin, or they can offer their Bitcoin as a match if they want. And so it can be organized however a company might want. We've got companies that offer only the Bitcoin savings plan and nothing else. And so it's just a way for employees to optionally buy Bitcoin for themselves off payroll if they want. The other side of it would be companies where, they're offering some Bitcoin to their staff so that they can get exposure to it without any expectation that they're going to have to buy their own Bitcoin to participate. And, this is just a great way, as I think for Bitcoiner business owners, the easiest way for people to start getting interested in Bitcoin is to own a little bit and start, getting interested and excited about it. And then,
go on.
Yeah. And so then the last variation is where there's a matching program. And this is kind of like the group RSP idea, where company is going to have some kind of an annual maximum or a per pay run maximum that they will offer their staff based on a certain contribution from their staff. And so the company and their employees are coming together, everyone's saving in Bitcoin, and over time, everybody's happy. And so that's kind of how it works.
And so in this setup, who's custodying the Bitcoin? Is the company custodying the Bitcoin for the employee?
No. So we have a third party partner that does custody for us. And so it's all, institutional, military grade Bitcoin custody. We recommend everybody obviously takes their Bitcoin into self-custody, but our product is really designed for people who are kind of new to Bitcoin, or, we want a company that has 10 or 100 or 1,000 staff to be able to offer this to everyone. Mm-hmm. So the experience is entirely inclusive. An employee is, added by their administrator. The whole platform operates just like a payroll or HRIS tool that, business is already using now. Administrator adds an employee gets an invitation to enroll themselves. And as part of that, they get access to our portal, which will also include their wallet.
Okay, got it. And then when they leave, I guess I'm just interested in some of the smaller details. An employee leaves that company, they get to that Bitcoin ownership goes with them. Is that how that works?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So right now, there's no vesting of contributions, which is another sort of difference between a traditional a deferred profit sharing plan or this. So basically, once an employer makes a contribution on the behalf of the employee has access to that Bitcoin immediately. So like I said, they're similar products, but they're different. And we built this thing in the spirit of how things have been done, but it's not. Okay,
awesome. I actually know an employer, and why I think what you're putting together is really helpful for people that have some payrolls that they have to manage, is that I know an employer who did this manually. And some of the employees just, they did it as pure employer contribution, no employee contribution. The employer was giving this as like a benefit to the employees. And for a few years, this was done. And I know somebody who questioned what they were getting and never really looked at the balance, because it was like, I think it was like $100 a month or something like that. And then after 4 years, I guess Bitcoin did what it did during that time. And they actually asked the employer to stop giving them the Bitcoin. They're like, I don't really look at this balance. I don't know what these sats are. I don't really, I'm not going to use it. Thanks. But, it's okay. Just, they were trying to be nice about it. Like, just save it, And then someone else said, no, those sats that you're looking at, that has like a Canadian dollar value. You should look up the Canadian dollar value. And they looked up the Canadian dollar value. And let me tell you, they immediately wanted to stay on this program. They were so happy. They were like blown away in shock, so because it was, this is $100 a month. But when your dollar cost averaging like that for years and Bitcoin goes where it goes, and they started some time ago, it's like, it was a really like a beautiful thing. So I think what you're doing is like really great because the employer has to manage that all and had to do it. It's quite a hassle. It's like
totally.
You're streamlining all that kind of stuff. And then I'm curious, what kind of companies are you seeing sign up so far? Is it like naturally Bitcoiners who are running companies that are coming to you? Like, what do you see?
Yeah, I would say today, like almost entirely our customer base is companies where a key person is a Bitcoiner.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I wonder if in the future, if Bitcoin just continues to, well, it will continue to live on as it has been. It's going to be interesting when you start to get calls from non-Bitcoiners to put this in. It'll almost be a sign that it's kind of jumped a shark, like it's moving to the mainstream when that happens. You're going to get some good insight from that.
Yeah, I think that, the way I think about it is like every company today is an internet company. And there was a time where companies didn't know if they needed a web page or not. Yeah. And then companies didn't know if they needed e-commerce or not, social media strategy. The internet has become progressively more ingrained in how we do business. And I think that trend is repeating again now with Bitcoin. And so, the companies that are using Bitcoin right now are like early adopters of web pages and stuff. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see the same trend unfold. And every company is going to be a Bitcoin company. Every company is going to offer this. It's just where the puck is going.
No, it's absolutely. I brought this up recently, but I want to just share it with you now. So I remember working at the Royal Bank in the late 1990s. And when I got there, I already I was building desktop computers at home and sticking in my modem and like putting extra memory in and connecting to the internet. And I remember I got to Royal Bank in their IT department. And I think I asked the person next to me, like, well, how do you get on the internet? And they're like, oh, yeah, you like go to this URL. I'm like, what do you mean you go to this URL? And so I went to this URL and they're like, it was the Royal Bank approved intranet. And like they had some sports news from the Toronto Maple Leafs, but like just the hand-picked articles that they had like duplicated on the intranet and like some financial news and like weather. And it was like a portal. Like that's when portals were big, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, like the company portal. And I remember going to this thing going, what the heck is this? Like, I want the internet. Like, I like it's my lunch break. I want to read every horrible article about the Toronto Maple Leafs that I can find. Like, what are you doing to me? Like, I want to grieve with these Toronto Maple Leaf articles. Why can't I get access to them? I was completely shocked. And there was just such a revolt over the next, I want to think 12 months. I left the Royal Bank after 3 months, by the way. That's all I could take. But from the friends that stayed there, I think in the next 12 months, they just opened it up the internet because they just couldn't keep everybody trapped inside. And I feel like it's like this reverse thing happening where Bitcoin is this like global network that's the small one still compared to the fiat global network. Yeah. And everyone's like trapped in this fiat network. But some of us are like, hey, I want access to this Bitcoin stuff. And they're slowly kind of opening and Bitcoin's just going to absorb the whole thing and the fiat world doesn't know it yet. It's kind of like the reverse intranet internet kind of situation. And it's just fascinating to play out because when you've seen technology evolve and you've seen patterns, you're like, oh, I've seen this game before. I know how this one ends. Bitcoin wins, Totally. So, that's wild that you're, and to me, it's like you're this Trojan horse, just like part of the game that you're like bringing it in, So, cool. Okay. And then do companies have to be, I don't know, are there any, there's just like detailed stuff for any business owners listening. Is there any FinTrack stuff that companies have to go through that's something they should be aware of or like any regulatory stuff? Or no, when Block Rewards comes in, it's pretty easy to set this thing up and you have a process and they don't, you kind of have the hand.
I mean, it's kind of both. We are a FinTrack regulated MSB and anti-money laundering stuff certainly applies to everything that we do. So we do try to make company onboarding as simple as possible, but it's true that there is some verification that happens for a new customer the same way, like if you want to
regular stuff. Okay. Yeah, got it. But it sounds like you guys have that dialed in so you can walk a company through that.
Yeah. Yeah. And outside of that, we can only service today Canadian employees that are in Canada. So this is the Canada only product right now. We're working on our US launch, and that's something that we're spending a lot of time working on the US launch right now. But right now, this is for Canadian companies and Canadian employees.
I like how clear you're being about that. Something is in your future. You're being very clear. I appreciate that. So, okay, cool. Will you speak at, I want to give out the Block Rewards URL. Can you just share that? What is it?
Blockrewards.com and blockrewards.ca will get you the same place.
Yeah, well, okay, thank you. And then you speak a lot. Were you recently in my mind? You were recently in El Salvador. Is that right?
That was actually going back now about a year. That was the end of November. That was the end of 2024.
Oh, okay. So time's flying. Okay. So what are you, what was, I'm just, for those people who, know El Salvador a little bit and you went out there, what can you share a little? I was out there this fall. Can you share just a little bit about your experience? Anything kind of stand out that you want to share from that experience? I'm just throwing this at you, so I'm not sure if you're ready for that.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I thought El Salvador was really cool. I really enjoyed the opportunity down there. There is a lot of Bitcoin happening for sure. Like I spent Bitcoin more than I spent dollars during my entire time there. I found that the average person receiving Bitcoin transactions can be cumbersome, and there is an issue with, even if it's like there isn't a tax reporting for it, you still need to train your employees on a point of sale or have a system that tracks your, the money coming in. So I think it's, they're very much leading the charge and probably doing a lot of the heavy lifting of like figuring out like what does it actually look like for people to be using Bitcoin in day-to-day life. Bitcoin has a long way to go in terms of its like UI. And that's also why I think the internet analogy is great. And your story about portals and stuff and like internet technology, for those of us who, we're all kind of the same age, we remember what the internet was like. Surfing the internet in the 90s, nobody was thinking about streaming 4K video on a handheld device. And even like the software to create payments online needed to be invented. That stuff didn't exist, and that was all stuff that happened in the 2000s. So I think that's kind of where we are with Bitcoin right now. So yeah, I think El Salvador, I hope it continues to work. I know that, there's just Bitcoin is the thing about Bitcoin is it's not meant to exist inside the systems that have evolved over the last hundreds of years, countries, banks. This is something totally different. And it's not going to sit cleanly inside the way we think about the world right now. What I think will happen is Bitcoin is going to force a reimagination of how governments think about capital control and how they imagine what it means to have their own currency. And those are kind of bigger ideas. I'm not saying that's going to happen tomorrow, but in the same way, like businesses couldn't ignore the internet and they couldn't decide that they're just not going to be internet companies. Like disruptive technology, forces a response, and that's what Bitcoin is going to do. And in the case of Bitcoin, it's not like so much a commercial landscape of enterprise. It's, institutional structure and like this is a civilization level technology.
Wow. Yes, agreed. And recently you brought up AI recently with the autonomous AI agents that are just kind of propagating right now. If you think that those agents now start kind of transacting either with stable coins and maybe saving in some Bitcoin or transacting with Bitcoin on Lightning and that kind of stuff, these aren't like inside the borders of a nation state. So now you have a layer of the digital economy that's just instantly become global and is going to look for a global medium of exchange, a global unit of account, a global savings technology. You can see where this is headed. And then how do nation states kind of like react to that? And how do they dare try to control that? So this is, I agree, this next 10 years, have you thought about that all? Like in 10 years, like 10 years from now, like I feel like nation states are under threat that they don't understand. Like,
I don't know.
Combination of AI with Bitcoin together.
I had to guess they won't exist. Not in the way that they do now. And, I think that I have said this for a long time. My personal guess is that AI will understand Bitcoin a lot before people do. And one day, literally, we're going to wake up one day and a Bitcoin will be worth like, $10 million or some insane number. Yeah. And it's purely just because, AI will just do the most rational thing. And, you know, as soon as it has a sufficient control, you know, of economic activity and a realization that there's one money that they can't make any more of, like it's just going to be sort of a binary 0 to 1 moment. And I think I don't think that moment is as far away as people generally do. You know, my guess is before 2028.
Wow. Scott, I think I'm so in shock hearing you say that, because I think the possibility of that is not zero. Like that's a big deal.
I mean, just look at how fast it's moving, right? Like a year ago, you couldn't make a video with somebody that didn't have like 7 fingers. And like now they're making like Hollywood quality movies in your basement. You know, it's like, it's accelerating. And
I don't know if you've played with Notebook LM or not from Google. I drop in a couple videos into Notebook LM and just say, hey, can you make a 5-minute explainer video on these kind of advanced like quantum physics videos that I'm watching? And the little video that it comes back to me, it'll be an hour YouTube video on like physics that you can drop into Notebook LM. Before I'm done the first 12 minutes of the video, Notebook LM, the AI, has already come back with a 5-minute explainer video, meaning that it digested the hour worth of content already and created a 5-minute summary video for me to watch. So then I stopped watching the hour video. I watched the explainer video. I'm like, that was absolutely fantastic. And this technology just came out from Notebook LM, from I can gather, within the last 6 months. It might be 3 months. Have you played with it at all yet? Notebook LM?
But I know what I'm going to be doing tonight.
Oh my God. So we did another example where we threw in 10 years of like customer success stories, and then it just uses that as its data source. So like you can tell it, like, this is my source of data. Don't look outside of the internet. Here's the source of data I want you to use. Make a video about this, make a presentation, and it's going to say, well, what's the purpose of the presentation? And we're like, well, this is for people who are new to Rockstar and might want to consider working with us, but don't know us yet. Use the 10 years of client success stories to craft a presentation for that audience. Scott, the level of presentation that came back had all of our team's jaws on the ground. It's like 2 weeks ago. It's absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, Notebook LM. You got to play with it. It's insane. It's completely insane. But anyway, I got sidetracked there. What you said there about 2028 is like, that's how I feel. You're more aggressive than me, because I'm like, oh, sometime in the next 10 years, like this is going to happen. But the second order effects of that happening are somewhat interesting. So, yeah.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to share on that subject, or no? You're thinking 2028 AI.
I'll stop with my predictions there.
Yeah. Okay. And sorry, I had something else I wanted to ask you. Yeah. What's the one thing you wish every financial advisor in Canada right now would know about Bitcoin? Like, is there one thing, like, never mind that whole AI angle that we just discussed and like what would happen from all that? Like, is there one thing that you're like, I just kind of wish they understood this? Does anything come to mind when I share that?
Yeah, I think about the Lindy effect, which is the idea that a technology, the longer it endures, the greater the likelihood of its continuing to endure. Mm-hmm. And, Bitcoin appears to be an incredibly durable technology and idea. And so long as that's true, the likelihood that over time, more and more people will understand and value the properties that it has are also very high. So that's what I think people need to understand. This is, could something change? For sure. But based on the information we have right now, today, is the chance that Bitcoin is going to be an enduring feature of how money works in the digital age, incredibly high.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, you're right. Because when you think of it, Bitcoin doesn't need you, the financial advisor. Bitcoin's going to do what it's going to do. And once you understand the architecture of it, how it lives on, then you realize that like it's just up to you, the financial planner, to figure this out. It doesn't really need you to figure it out. It doesn't care.
Yeah. I mean, people aren't going to have financial advisors. This is another thing.
Yeah. Scott, pump for you, man. Pump for Block Rewards. Where is the best place that people can kind of track down what you're up to? So blockrewards.com or .ca for Block Rewards.
Yeah.
They can go there. Online, is there anywhere else you want to point anyone to? And your books. Sure. Where can your books?
Yeah, my X handle is Lantern Bitcoin, and I have a personal website where you can find all my kind of podcasts and my books and my other sort of like my conference speeches, and that's lanternbitcoin.com. So that's the easiest place. And if you're interested to connect professionally, I'm also very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Scott, one day we're going to have to pull you out here into the Toronto area just to share you with our clients in person, because it's just a different vibe. So I really appreciate you doing this, man. Cheering for everything that you're doing. Love your stuff. Can't wait for the next book. Thanks for doing this, Scott. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.